plenty of work in Africa. So I'm really delighted to be here moderating today's panel on infrastructure outsourcing. I think we've got a terrific team to discuss this topic, which is very important, of course, for the success of the telecoms industry. So given that we are running a bit late and we're limited on time anyway, I think we'll go straight in, and I'll ask each panel member at the same time as they answer the first question, if they could perhaps please give us a quick introduction to who they are and what their business is. So my first question, pretty obviously, I guess the starting point is, why should you outsource? What's it all about? So Tom.
Thank you very much, Mike, and hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm Tom Greenwood, the Group CEO of Helios Towers, and we're a telecom towers business operating across Africa and Middle East with a large business here in Tanzania. You spoke to my colleague Gwakisa earlier when he did the keynote speech. So Mike, thanks for the question. Look, I think in terms of outsourcing, clearly it's something that can work well if done correctly. And we see that, both within the telecoms industry, but of course, pretty much every other industry worldwide. So it's kind of nothing new, but there's things that you've got to get right. And, I think ultimately, looking at it from the telecoms perspective, and mobile operators looking to outsource certain elements of their operations or network, and we see that can be very successful, such that they can then focus more on the front end of their network and their core competencies. So, for example, in the towerco space in Tanzania, we run the passive infrastructure of the network, which includes the tower itself and the power. And power is a key challenge, particularly when there's no grid in the area, or the grid is not running 24 hours a day. And so we, as a towerco, and Minara are the same, will provide that power service to the mobile operators, which means the mobile operators can focus on the real stuff that they're good at. So I think it can work well if you choose the right partner and you have the right contracts and SLAs in place, and obviously perform to a high quality.
Thanks. Abel?
It's tired, I think. My name is Abel Kinyau. I'm head of network operations from Vodacom Tanzania. Going to a question that, why have we decided to choose the model of outsourcing? If I speak with Vodacom, why Vodacom have decided to choose the model of outsourcing, there is a numerous advantage attached to it. If you look, for example, the TowerCo, we have two main TowerCo partners where they are doing the entire passive within the Vodacom portfolio. So one of the main advantage is that Vodacom have gone away from injecting massive capex initially to build the tower, and we have moved to an OpEx model. What is an OpEx model? You pay almost the same capex, but with a certain period of time while the service is running. So Vodacom decided to choose this model and continue to pay the capex while you are getting some sort of revenues from the infrastructure which has been built by the TowerCo. So as Vodacom, we have not outsourced only the TowerCo thing, even the maintenance and operations sit with. Can you hear me?
It's working, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Even the maintenance and the operation sits with a different partner. So by doing that, we have improved a lot of aspects. As Tom mentioned, one of the key aspects, especially for us operators, is the network uptime. You cannot achieve those massive network uptime without having a stable power, whether you are getting from the grid or you are getting from the generators. So the TowerCo came in, they've guaranteed us like more than 99.9 something network uptime, which allows us to sell most of our product. So TowerCo business being not the core business for Vodacom, it allows us to think of other innovations rather than continuing its operational overheads, so something which our partners can do where it is their areas of expertise.
Abel, so before I turn to Judy, I'm just interested in what you're saying. What you haven't said is what you lose as an operator when you when you buy your towers from a TowerCo. Isn't there an element to which you can no longer say we've got the best network in Tanzania because your competitors are using the same towers that you are? So do you feel that there's a downside in that respect?
It's no downside. To be honest, what differentiates you is the quality of the service which you are giving. So instead of chasing, I want to be having more towers where you are producing not a good quality, with the same environment, with the same everything, you can differentiate with yourself by the quality, the services, the numerous type of services which you are offering to the customers, as well as the creativity attached to the services you are providing.
Thanks. Judy.
Hi. So my name is Judy Nguru. I am the Senior Vice President of Strategic Development at Raxio Data Center. We build data centers across, at least we're in the process of building data centers across Africa. We're currently in 6 markets. Our first operating facility is in Uganda, and we're currently constructing in Ethiopia. We're breaking ground in Mozambique on the 29th of this month, and we're also moving into DRC and Cote d'Ivoire. So to answer your question, Mike, I think the best way for us is that we do believe in the outsourcing model, because I think the underlying factor is that outsourcing should deliver value for your business, and that's what you should be outsourcing, anything that does not add value to your business, right? So speaking to what Tom had said and what Abel has said, you're looking at, we're an infrastructure business, and we build carrier-neutral colocation facilities, so that is our core. It does not add value to our business, an MNO, to invest that CapEx in an infrastructure that costs millions of dollars, and yet they could repurpose that investment into their core services, right? If they're moving into voice or data, that might be where the value is placed in terms of their investment. So for us, we and not just for MNOs, I think even service providers and cloud service providers, that's what we're seeing in this continent now, is that they're moving away from investing in building their own infrastructure and now utilizing the experts in that particular, service.
So do you see Raxio as a supplier or as a customer of outsourcing services?
So we are a supplier, and we can, our own core services are also, not our core services, but we have services that we also outsource. Like, for example, the actual construction of the data center. We do use service providers. We use, contractors to build the data centers. It's not in-house. And I think in terms of the value chain, that's what we're trying to showcase, that there's a key player in each category, and they can all deliver value if you concentrate on what your core services are.
Thanks. Steve.
Mike, thanks very much. I'm Steve Harris. I'm the CEO of Paradigm. Paradigm is a shareholder and owner of the tower company here, Monara. I think, a lot of has already been answered, so I'll keep mine very brief, but I think there's 2 areas really. The first one is focus. Towers and the operation of shared infrastructure is the only focus of a TowerCo, and therefore they're able to provide a high degree of efficiencies because they focus on every area of that value chain. MNOs really and their customers have different priorities, quite rightly: products, services, billing, branding. So in that sense, the focus definitely brings efficiencies. The other thing that people probably don't, or isn't readily obvious really, is that there's actually a really good economic benefit that can be gained here, because you're not just sharing the tower, you're not just taking one tower structure and putting more mobile operators on it. There's actually the whole power infrastructure which falls behind that, which is also shared, from generators to rectifiers, etc. So the economic proposition that we're able to give to mobile operators should be very attractive, and it is very attractive.
I was going to ask, when you're selling power, are you selling kilowatt hours? Are you charging by the kilowatt hour? Or are you charging for the gen sets and for the diesel? And how does it work?
So what we normally do is try and make it simple and say, look, we'll give you a charge for power based in a band that you're using. And what we don't do as a power company and a tower company, which you can't do readily, is take the risk on the input cost of that, because who knows? I mean, we're just seeing what's happening with diesel. Would be out of business. But what we do guarantee is that basically, if the power, if the diesel price stays the same, grid price stays the same, we'll continue giving you 99.9 something availability, and your price won't go up.
Thanks. So Richard.
I need to outsource my microphone. Richard Vaillant. I'm regional managing director for East Africa and Indian Ocean for Camusat. Camusat, we are a contractor, and we build towers, we install power equipment, we deploy fiber optic, and we maintain all what we install. We are a contractor, and we are not subcontractor, and our clients, operators, TowerCo, they don't want us to subcontract and outsource. What they want, they want us to do the job. So why outsource? Because I think if I put my feet in the shoes of my clients, they want to have the specialist. Tom was talking about power. It's the main, one of the main, if not the main challenge for the network in Africa. You need specific engineering, mechanician as well, because you need to start genset, maintain genset. And when you are a TowerCo and even more an operator, you don't manage this, you don't have to manage this. But you want to be sure the one you subcontract to will do the job. And by himself, because behind that there is a question of responsibility. They are responsible for their client and the accountability. And so for us, we don't want to subcontract, we don't want to outsource, because we are the one for which we are asked to do the job. So we have, it's our core business. It is not their core business, so it makes sense to outsource.
Thanks. So I'll move on to my next question, and I'll go back to you, Richard, so that you don't have to wait till the end. And touching on what you just said, actually, I wonder if I could ask all of the panel to expand a bit on what you should not outsource. Please don't just say, keep your core business. I'd like to know specifically in the telecom sector, what things does it make sense to outsource and what does it not? And I can give you an example. So I was working for a client not that long ago that wanted to outsource their radio planning, their mobile operators. Is that a sensible thing to outsource? And where does it stop? What should you not be outsourcing?
Okay. Radio, the planning is the most important, in fact. The planning you should not outsource because it's directly the interest of the network owner. But the implementation of the radio equipment can be outsourced. All what is strategic should never be outsourced. It's as simple as that, for me.
Steve, you got anything to add to that?
Thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, I think this is slightly a cop-out of an answer, but I think you have to look at two things and really what's the environment you're operating in, because I would say in certain environments, if there isn't a subcontractor market there or a good outsource partner, then you need to keep those activities in-house. And I can give you an example of that. I used to run American Tower I used to run the EMEA region for American Tower. We were in situations in certain markets at a time like Uganda where we couldn't actually outsource effectively operations. And I know towercos have had this elsewhere where there wasn't the maintenance providers. And we had to do that ourselves. Now, we took it back and insourced it to enable us to get the quality. So I think my starting point would be, if the market can the market provide the service that you want, and if it can't, then it's not an option to you. The other thing I would say, which is the sort of cop-out side of the question, is, well, it really depends on the skills you've got inside and your own strategy, because certain things may be deemed as strategic and crucial to an organisation, where others may adopt a different approach. So I think it's kind of specific on the company.
And, it occurs to me there's also shouldn't there be an element of working out whether there's some reason to think the outsourced service provider can do it better than you can?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, you know, there's two elements to it. Can they do it better than you can, and can they do it more cost effectively than you can? And I think if you can genuinely say yes to both of that, then it's worth looking at the model. If you can't, then you're not going to let your customer service go down, and you're not going to pay more. So.
Thanks. So Judy.
I think, you know, for data center companies, obviously we will not outsource co-location, as that is our core. But for an industry, I think your skills, you know, the critical skills, the people, the human resource that are, you know, the head of your companies, the knowledge that they have, you might not want to do all that analysis and have it sitting externally, you know. So if you're doing, we spend a lot of time doing market research in some of the markets that we're trying to move into. We collect a lot of data. Yes, there are experts out there who've already collected that data, but if you're going to host it, maybe that's not something you want to outsource to someone else, because it's critical to your expansion strategy.
Thanks. Abel?
As MNOs, mobile network operators, there are key functions which you cannot dare to outsource. Camusat mentioned exactly that. You cannot at any moment in time outsource the planning. The radio planning and the capacity planning, that must solely sit within yourself. The core network is something which is the brain of an MNO. That is something which you cannot outsource. And last but not least, the network operation center is very important. The network operations center should sit within yourself to manage the various stakeholders. You have the tower sitting on this side. You have the active maintenance partner. You have other partners who are working together with you. At some point, there might be pointing fingers. So you need somebody to moderate between your partners. So these are the things which are key, which you should not outsource, without forgetting the billing system. The billing systems and the other core business should sit within the MNOs.
So that's very interesting that you mentioned billing. One of the biggest projects I worked on just last year actually was outsourcing the billing systems for two sister companies in the same group, not in Africa. And they picked a service provider when they were going to create a billing system for them, but based on a platform that they were also going to use for other operators. So it's a bit too early to say whether that's been a success, but I'm particularly interested that you mention billing as something that should not be outsourced.
Sure.
I'll follow up with them and see how it went.
Sure. You have to follow. You might outsource the hardware part of it, but the brain of itself, it should stay internally. Judith mentioned about what we call the skill set you have internally. It's very important to retain them so that you can run efficiently.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you. Tom?
I mean, generally anything strategic, you know, we don't outsource, you know, the decisions of, you know, which markets to go in, what sort of products to target, what customers to target, what locations to deploy capital in, and contracts, etc. But just the one point to bring out also is outsourcing isn't completely binary. It's not always a 0 or 1 type scenario, you know. So, you know, if we hire Camusat for maintenance, it's not like we say, yeah, here are the keys, we'll see you next year. You know, we're constantly working with them, our operations team, their operations team. We're co-locating in the same offices in the regions and at the centre. They'd be using some of our systems day in, day out. You know, we have a real kind of one team, one business approach whereby we don't necessarily see our outsourced partners as separate. They're all part of the Helios family, and we work under the same processes. So yeah, just to make that point, it's not always a 0 or 1 type scenario.
Right, no, thanks. My next question is there anything different about Africa? Now, I recognise Africa is a massive continent with a wide variety of countries in it, but is there something different in general about what you need to outsource, what you shouldn't be outsourcing in Africa as compared to other parts of the world? Tom, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily, really. I mean, just speaking from a towerco's perspective, I suppose the power element is potentially different in Africa than, say, in some other places where tower companies do not do the power part. So that's a difference in Africa. So I guess as a towerco operating here, you need that additional operational expertise than perhaps you do elsewhere. So that would be a difference, very specific for us, yeah.
Abel?
I think Africa on its own, it is something which can be treated separately. Tom mentioned about the grid availability. Thanks to REA now, it's reaching most of the places that you can find the grid available. But the main challenge, especially for the tower cos, and even when we were owning the towers, is running the sites with 24/7 within generator. There is high operational cost when you run the site 24/7 on generators. Customers out there, they don't know what type of investment or operations you have put in so that you can provide the service. When the service goes down, nobody understands that you are running the site on generator or what. The customers are looking to get the service at any moment in time. So the main difference between African investment and the rest of the world, especially Europe, is availability of the infrastructures. That is the key thing which can differentiate Africa.
Thanks. Judy?
So from a data center perspective, I think what makes Africa different is that we're starting to see the developed economies, or the players in the developed economies, especially cloud providers and CDNs, outsourcing their services, right, into this continent. You know, so we're moving away from them. What we've seen in their markets is that they're building their own facilities. Here, they're willing and ready to move into a facility as long as it meets their specifications, right? So, and that creates an opportunity for the continent, you know, because there's job growth, economies will grow. So I think we're in a unique space now because we can take advantage of the technologies that have been developed for us to be able to address the gaps that currently exist.
Thanks.
I think from a telco perspective, Tom mentioned power, and power is a significant differentiator. I mean, you know, customers, mobile operator customers expect the same level of service, and they want the same network quality that they want anywhere in the world, and they want the devices that will support the same applications. And I think so the role for somebody like ourselves in the telco market is to provide that, and power is the bit that's probably different here. And I think it's a bit more than that because you know, there's a lot happening in that particular sector which can make some significant differences to the cost base to the end user. So there's an awful lot in terms of battery technology, in terms of looking at rural sites and trying to get up to solutions that provide more economic answers. There's an awful lot in terms of green energy. I mean, we as a company, you know, don't like the use of diesel for lots of different reasons, but the planet is certainly one of them. So without going too far away from the question, I think, you know, the key differentiator for me of operating here, and I've worked in markets where we've had towers in Europe, which frankly speaking, you know, are much, much easier to operate. You don't need a network operations center. We put remote monitoring on all our sites so we can see exactly what's happening on sites in terms of access and fuel levels and generators, etc. It's a different type of operating model. But at the end of the day, the customer wants the same, and we have to find a way of giving customer the same levels, same service levels.
For my part, we have the feet on the ground by definition when you're a contractor, and it's very difficult question to answer because Africa is so global, and I can tell you some of our companies here are both in Madagascar and Malawi. They are in Africa, even if Madagascar would say they belong to Indian Ocean, but it's completely different challenges. In Malawi, we have a big problem of human resources. In Madagascar, we don't have. In Madagascar, we have a crazy geography to deal with that we don't have in Malawi. It's much easier. So it's very difficult. But what, from my experience, I spent 12 years in Southeast Asia, a couple of years in South America. There is something that I noticed that the gap between countryside and urban environment is absolutely huge in Africa. Really much more than the other continents I've been working in. And it translates, of course, for the power. The number of off-grid sites that you can have in Africa is much larger usually than in the other countries. But but the rest, the rest also the skills that you will find in the urban area and in the countryside are completely different. So the gap between city and countryside, which exists in all countries, is absolutely just amazing in Africa, I found from our experience, if I have to pick one.
Thank you. I do have some more questions, but I want to give the audience an opportunity. You might have some questions. I see there's one there, and then there's one there. Do you need to take the microphone? So we're still...
Cool. This one is working. Hi, Bradley Shaw here from Link Global. I've got a question for Tom and for Steve. In terms of the network as a service model, are you guys seeing that as a potential opportunity for you in Africa? Is it an area that you guys are playing in? And how are you seeing guys like the announcement by Elon Musk and ourselves as Link providing rural coverage directly from satellites? Are you seeing that as a potential competition to you guys? And then Abel, for you, another question in terms of the connectivity. Does it matter where the connectivity comes from in the rural, if it's from terrestrial or satellite-based products, if the quality of service is in place? Thank you.
No, great questions. First one, NAS, network as a service. Yeah, potentially. Could be an ancillary product for us. It's it's a natural extension of owning and operating some of the current passive infrastructure, owning some extra.
Tom, I'm only a humble lawyer.
Oh, right, sorry.
Since I'm only a humble lawyer, could you explain to me, if not to everyone else, what the service means?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it comes in many shapes and sizes, but it effectively means a neutral host, like a towerco or someone else, owning parts of effectively some extra boxes on every site. So maybe it's owning the base station and running multiple operators through it, for example. So it's effectively just extending the sharing of the current tower infrastructure to parts on the sort of edge of the RAN, basically. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's definitely a natural extension of a current towerco's business. And you've seen examples of that, other tower companies in different parts of the world doing it, so it's not totally groundbreaking, although it sometimes needs some regulatory hurdles to be overcome, basically. But yeah, operationally it makes sense. Steve, do you want to take the next one?
Yes, I mean, just maybe on a quick view of my own on that one. I mean, I many years ago used to work for a broadcast TV company, radio company, where effectively all the we operated a network, and that network took signal from the rollout from a playout studio across our network and transmitted it. And I think that model, technically, it took time before that model was possible in the mobile sector, and now you've got to the point where you can have IP networks that will allow that type of sharing. To me, there's probably a natural evolution, and as a towerco, you should be looking to, and as Tom quite rightly says, governments sell individual spectrum, there's some regulatory issues, but for me it would be the way forward, and we should embrace that and go and do it. I was just trying to remember your second question because I lost my page. Oh, low orbiting satellite. Yeah, I mean, look, I think you know, at the end of the day, well, as I say, my last company I worked for 10, 11 years was an American tower, and we used to watch very closely the developments in low orbiting satellites, because I think the customer will go wherever it gives them the best, you know, the best opportunity to get that connectivity. I think that, you know, for rural areas, from what I understand, and you probably understand it, I'm sure, a million times better than me, there's, you know, there may be a role in the future which companies like Vodacom will look at and say, yeah, it might make more sense to use that. That's the future.
Thanks. And Abel? I think those are the ones that doesn't work.
I think let me take the question of connectivity. You asked about does it matter what type of connectivity you can deliver to the area. What matters is the service. The media of how you deliver the service is something which comes second. So whether the satellite can suffice your needs, you can go for it and offer the services. The only challenge which you are having is the demand or the data demands. Some of the legacy satellites, they cannot carry, or they are not moving quick enough to cater for the demand of service requirements. That's why at some points you see most of the MNOs, they are opting to go either for fiber or other high capacity medias so that to provide the services.
And there was another question. That was the gentleman there's got the microphone ready, I think. So this gentleman, yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Sanga Kazia. I'm from MTN South Sudan. And my question is focused on the comments that have arisen regarding the managed service, what can be outsourced and what cannot be outsourced. When you look at the trends globally, we are seeing that there's a lot of RAN sharing or radio access network sharing. So things that used to be like strategic to an organization are no longer strategic as we speak now. Most of the European countries are sharing the access or the planning that we're talking about. What remains as strategic is a decision-making process, not necessarily the planning. So as the world evolves, I think we'll be seeing more and more of elements that we thought were strategic being outsourced. Thank you.
Thanks. So that doesn't sound like that was a question, but it was an observation. Thank you. And that was a gentleman here.
My name is Naza Nicholas Kirama, President of Internet Society Tanzania. I have a question for Abel Kinyau. First of all, the issue of outsourcing is a very nice space to be at, because if Extensia was to build the Serena Hotel and then come to hold the Connect Summit, it would take years to do that. So my question is, as if the operations cost is very high, that tends to go to the customer, to the end user. I was wondering, when you outsource and save some money, does this apply to the consumer as well? Does the money that you save from the operations from outsourcing also goes to the consumer? Thank you.
So do the savings get passed on to the consumer? Does anyone like to take that? Judy? I think he addressed it to Abel first.
It was directly addressed to me. In terms of outsourcing, it's not only about the money. If you heard when I was answering the first question, why outsourcing? Money is the second thing. One of the best things is bringing the operational efficiency, as well as the big laden of having to pay your capex over time. It's not that you are not paying that capex. The only thing or the leverage which you are getting, instead of having to inject a full amount of capex on year one, it depends with your contract with the service providers, whether a tower or what. You can pay the same amount of capex in 10, 15 years, depending with the type of the contract, instead of paying that same capex within year one. That's why I said, with the same money which you could have invested in building a tower or doing what, you can use that money to expand your network and start gaining the revenue, which will enable you to pay that your investment within over time. But it's not only about the investment. I said clearly that the operational efficiency. Right now, I'm only buying the kilowatt per hour from the towerco. I don't care what he's doing at the background, whether he's installing the generator, whether he's installing what. What I'm looking is the uptime, which is the key for me. And for mobile network operators, the mother of the KPIs is the availability. If your network is not available, you cannot sell anything. So passive infrastructure is one of the key drivers to the availability. Then the other things comes in. So the strategy of outsourcing, especially the passive infrastructure, is not only about the money, it's about bringing the efficiency as well, because you are giving the people who understand what towerco business is. And we concentrate on innovating as Vodacom. We innovate other things so that we sell the services. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Sort of.
So I'm afraid we're going to have to call an end to it. I've been told that's the end of the session. I would just abuse my prerogative as chair to add a final observation on that last question. It seems to me that if the market is competitive, then any cost savings will ultimately be passed on to consumers through the action of competition. Which is why, in best practice for all telecoms regulation, should be about encouraging competition. So with that said, thank you very much to all the panel. I really appreciate your contributions. Please join me in thanking them in the normal manner.
A big round of applause, please, for Mike and his panelists, Tom, Abel, Richard, Judy, and Steve. They will be around for some Q&A afterwards, so I know I cut off some people because running short of time, but please do catch them afterwards for some Q&A. Let's now switch to our next speaker. We're going to have a keynote session now on licensing and regulation by Dr. Emmanuel Manasseh, Director for Industry Affairs at TCRA. So we're going to have the podium coming up on stage. Can we